Okay, so hello everyone. I'm a bit nervous, but it's fine. So my name is Ivana Nikolic, and today I will be telling you more about the China in the Balkans, which is basically interactive map that my company, organization that I work for, called Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, or BIRN, published last December 15th. So. So what did we do? We basically mapped Chinese-linked mostly economic activities in the following countries: Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Greece, Montenegro, North Macedonia and Serbia. So it is a big interactive map where you will be able to actually see all of these projects with some kind of project description and controversies that we managed to identify. But anyway, before I start with that, this is just like a brief outline of the presentation. I will shortly explain what BIRN is, what is it that we do. Also, why did we come up with the idea to talk about Chinese investments and other economic projects in the region. Also a bit about our methodology and main findings, and my personal favorite part is how was it? Because that is the question that we asked to our journalists and fact checkers who actually worked on the map. And of course, hopefully at least 10 minutes of your questions. So BIRN is actually a network of non-governmental organizations that are promoting democracy, freedom of speech, media freedoms, also transparency and accountability in Southeastern Europe and Central Europe as well. So we have sort of local independent organizations in 6+1 countries in the region. We are currently opening the new office in Montenegro, hopefully next year. We also have a BIRN Ltd, which is another organization within the network, and BIRN Ltd was actually project partner on the project China Index. So I work for BIRN Hub, which is based in Sarajevo, Bosnia, and it is sort of umbrella organization, so we are implementing regional and international programs mostly. So we do also have Balkan Insight, yes, thank you. Balkan Insight is if you're interested in the Balkans but you don't know the languages, then just go to Balkan Insight because we do reporting in English. We also have translations to local languages, and we cover basically all sorts of things, and China in the Balkans is one of the focus pages that we have on Balkan Insight. So here you will be able to basically track anything in relation to China and its activities, investments, any kind of ties between Beijing and other countries in the region. Okay, I will now try it. Okay. So why did we map China's endeavors in Southeastern Europe? So, I mean, these are sort of obvious questions and obvious answers. Like in the rest of the world, we wanted to see what the China is doing and what are the costs of their actions, right? Because we have been seeing this Chinese influence grow, mostly through this much mentioned Belt and Road Initiative. However, what are the major consequences and major obstacles when it comes to China in the region, but not only in the Balkans, I would say globally, are some of these things. So the environment as probably the number one issue, then political influence, corruption, growing debt, which is the case a lot in the Western Balkans, especially in Montenegro, and disinformation campaign or fake news. Something is wrong with these letters, but anyway. So what we noticed is that the growing number of Chinese economic activities in the region, but access to contracts and official documents was extremely hard. So just to give you the idea of how hard it was to get to some official contracts, memorandums of understanding, annexes, is that we managed to map 136 economic activities of China in the Western Balkans. What do you think? How many official documents did we manage to obtain? Anyone? Don't be shy. Yeah? Well, no. A bit more than that. Well, it was 60. Okay, so, but anyway, that's really not, that wasn't enough, and I will tell you why a bit later. So can we please go to the map now? Yeah, so this is how the map looks like. I will not sort of waste time because I have only 15 minutes to talk about the map, but you can just play with the map yourself. If you click, for example, on Albania, no, upstairs, on the top of the map, on the top you see Balkan region, and then okay, well, this is not, yeah. So basically then you will see all the projects that we managed to map, and also you will be able to read like a very short description of the project, some important details that we thought were important. So on the left side are filters, so you can filter by projects by area, by type of projects, also transparency, which is probably like the sort of very expensive word when it comes to China, because nothing is really transparent. And also what will be interesting for most of you are these Chinese partners, because we mapped every Chinese company that is anyhow involved in the Western Balkans. Okay, can we now go back to the presentation? Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to the methodology, it was 2020 and it was COVID time, and we wanted to do some kind of interactive maps. And we were also very interested in China, but then we just didn't really know where to start. So friends from the Center for Strategic and International Studies helped us a lot. So if you click that initial information, yeah. So this is what we got from them, sort of Excel sheet with economic activities of China in the region. And then you see all the countries are also listed here, sectors, subsectors, projects or deals, like all sorts of things. And then we were like, yeah, let's try to do that, something for our countries. So we assigned 6 journalists. We gave them this Excel sheet and we said, okay, so you need to check these activities. You need to see if all of these activities are like still on. And if you come across any new activity, just add it to the Excel sheet. So can we go again back to the presentation? And I will stop with this, yeah. So we chose categories that they were supposed to cover. Then they were researching for about 1.5 years. It took them quite a lot of time. And then we came to this fact-checking the data. If you can just open this link, please. So we came the spreadsheet containing some 100 and, no, not that one, this, yeah. 136 activities, and this is how this Excel sheet actually looked like. And now we were supposed to fact-check everything. And because BIRN is also very involved in publishing investigations, country-based or cross-border, we do fact-check every single claim that we make. So now our fact-checkers, and we had 2 of them, were supposed to basically check each of these things. And then they were asking all sorts of questions from our journalists. How do you know this? How do you know that? Please give me the source of information for this claim, for that claim. And then what was the problem? The problem was the lack of official documents that we could actually refer to, and also mainstream media, not, well, throughout the Balkans, but mostly in Serbia, because in Serbia, you know, China is, by our political leadership, they are just perceived as friends, just to give you the idea. During the COVID time, because we got this equipment and vaccines and everything, then we had these huge billboards of Mr. C on the, of course, red background, and, you know, like his face. And it said, Hvala, brate C, or thank you, brother C. And also China is referred to as sort of like brother nation. And then, of course, in the mainstream media, you can't really get critical information about Chinese activities. And they're mostly referred to as investments, but not everything is really investment. And even though if it is investment, it comes at a great cost, as we saw with pollution, environment, political interference, and everything. So for our fact checkers, it was in some points, well, of course, they had information, official information, so they could fact check. But for some other things, it was really tricky to do this kind of thing. Can we just again go back to the presentation? Yeah. So the main findings, as you can see here, Serbia still remains the main playground for the Chinese activities. Montenegro is, as you probably know, heavily indebted to China, mostly because of this huge highway they're building throughout the country. Then in Bosnia, we had energy takeover. In North Macedonia, a sort of lack of interest from the Chinese part to invest. In Albania, sort of pushbacks, as basically ever since 2016 there has been no Chinese investment in Albania. And when it comes to Greece, what we have is a disillusion and disattachment, which is something that we, sort of a quote we got from the expert on Sino-Greek relations, who actually said that after this first initial joy when the Chinese came to Greece, people just started feeling, you know, abandoned and in a way betrayed, because it's not as they thought it would be. And also, interesting thing about Greece is that we managed to find as much as 6 like cultural, we call them cultural diplomacy things, and these are sort of cultural centers that China is opening up throughout the Balkans as a like a sort of soft power, as a way to influence politics and society there as well. So, as I said, 135 Chinese-linked projects. So most of them are marred by allegations of corruption, exploitation, environmental harm, also human rights abuses, and that is something we also extensively covered for Balkan Insight. Then complete lack of transparency, like sort of wall of silence built around the vast majority of these activities. When it comes to Serbia, which is, as we said, the main playground, we have this worrying level of influence on Serbia's laws, then failure to use tools such as environmental impact assessments. And also what is happening is that, so you have China, let it be Chinese investment, or but it comes with Chinese money because we take money as a loan from their state bank, and then they come and they bring their own workers. So they manage to sort of have their own like, you know, not to open up space for like local investors or local companies to work on the projects, but in many cases they come with their own people, or they even bring, and we have seen that in Serbia, like stories, gossips, that they come with like prisoners from China who then work on some projects, developments, or infrastructure things and stuff like that. So the way governments do business with China is eroding weak institutions in the Balkans, encouraging corruption, and slowing down progress towards EU integration. Well, this is just an important thing, is that we should not really only blame China for this, because they cannot do this if they don't have, you know, people from the Balkans, people from the governments and from the institutions who just say, yes, come on, come here, do whatever you want. We have laws, but we don't have to respect them. So this is really not to blame China only. And these are like huge questions for the political leadership in our own countries, who are actually letting them do all sorts of things, in the first place, environmental harm. So how was it as a question for our journalists? So it was hard. I just talked to them like before I came here, and these are some of the answers that I got. So the main obstacles, as I said, lack of transparency, amount of projects, especially in Serbia. It's also important to note that while we were researching Serbia, of course, there are many projects, but many other projects are not really projects, but they are sort of only announcements. You know, like you just have a public official in Serbia saying, China is coming here investing money in this. And then you want to see what it is, and there is zero information. So in a way, they are just some kind of mouthpiece for the government, and also mouthpiece for the Chinese government, because they say actually nothing, you know. Then we had, impossibility to obtain official, confirmed information, especially about the amount of money that is being invested or borrowed. Then troubles getting all relevant information per economic activity. This is what one of the journalists said, that official documents are nearly non-existent. Well, not non-existent, they exist, but not accessible. As I said, wall of secrecy, then fake information in the mainstream media, then many projects, as I said, many projects were just based upon some, you know, like pro-government media PR and nothing more than that. And also, this is what the fact checker said, that the amount of information we had to check and the lack of official documents to check the claims. So what's next? We have this nice map and we would like to work more on that one. So in October, Birn got involved in the project called Spheres of Influence Uncovered, and this project will last for until the end of 2025. So we basically teamed up with partners from Germany, Georgia and Uzbekistan, and the idea is to sort of track and research these spheres of influence. We will be mostly focused on Russian, Chinese and EU's activities and economic impacts on the Western Balkans, South Caucasus and Central Asia. I think that we are supposed to present these interactive maps and corresponding research sometimes by the end of 2024. So stay tuned. And yes, if you have any questions. Okay, that's nice. We just need a mic.
Thank you. My name is Philip Nubel, Global Voices, and we're very happy to also republish Birn stories regularly on our website. So it's a pleasure to have you here. I was wondering if you could speak about actually the sources of any pushback against Chinese influence in the Western Balkans, if there are any, and who are those either people, communities, institutions, or the ideologies behind, I suspect, the fewer voices that are saying no, or yes, but, or we should be careful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's right. We don't really have much voices saying these things, and they're mostly, we have 10 minutes left. They're mostly coming from the civil society, also from the researchers, from the academia, because we have several projects that are basically killing and polluting our environment. For example, the town where I live is called Smederevo. So we have this huge steel mill, which was of course, during the communist times, it was a state-owned company, then it was sold to the US Steel, then it was sold back to the Serbian government, and then the Chinese came in 2016 and they bought the company. So now we have no idea about the amount of pollution the company is actually has in the town, because everything related to the amount of pollution is completely not state secret, but they just don't want to disclose any kind of information. In cities such as my city, we have very, I would say, strong and persistent NGOs or simply, like communities, local communities that are trying to fight. But they say we don't want China to leave our country. We don't want these investments to go. We just want to have fulfilled our own right for a healthy environment. The problem is that the state is on the side of China and not on the side of its citizens. So I would say that yes, to answer your question shortly, yes, we do have several voices coming from the civil society and from the local communities, also from academics, but I'm afraid that we cannot do that alone.
Hi, Ivana. This is, I think, the first time we've met in person,
yes.
maybe. But
nice
Brady
with
IRI in Brussels. Again, just happy to sing the praise of the work that you guys do at Birn. I'm always happy to collaborate with you guys. So on this, following on from the last question, I'm curious more about what kind of messaging there is around these projects, because you mentioned there's allegations of worker abuse or corruption. And I'm just curious if you have had the opportunity or will have the opportunity to get a better idea of what proportion of the information online is critical of these projects versus promoting these projects, if there's any indication that there is a campaign to promote these projects by the local governments or the Chinese officials versus those that are critical of them and maybe shedding light on it.
Well, it's sort of a tough question. As I said, in the mainstream media in each of these countries, you cannot really hear anything that is critical about China. And China is being praised as the biggest investor, as sort of savior of our economy. They came with vaccines, they came with masks. And irony is that we actually built this company, like the building, which was supposed to produce Sinopharm vaccines. So we do have like the company, but it's not working. They're not producing anything because basically, the interest in vaccines dropped significantly. The COVID pandemic is not really a pandemic anymore. And then in the mainstream media, you will not hear anything about that huge building, you know, that exists somewhere with 0 people inside. You will just hear appraisals of the everything that China does. I am not sure if I ever heard anything coming from the mainstream media which would be critical about China. And then when it comes to like, I suppose it will be interesting to do some kind of a project, disinformation project, and then to see more about the stance of citizens in these countries towards the messages that they get from the media in relation to China. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew, with the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. You mentioned that the mainstream media hasn't reported on these issues. Why and how have mainstream media been co-opted into the pro-China narrative?
Well, that's sort of easy question. We don't have free media in the Balkans, unfortunately. So pro-government media and mainstream media are like really aligned to every government narrative. So you will not hear anything bad about China from them, you know. So we do have a handful of independent media organizations and media outlets that are willing to share any verified, fact-checked story about what China is doing, and I'm happy that BIRN is among them. But they're simply aligned. They are not supposed to, go against the state policies and the state narratives. So, unfortunately, that is one main reason. And I would also say that they don't really want to. Researching something, that's a pain in the neck, you know. Like you hear gossips and then you go and then you investigate. Then you have to fact check everything. It definitely takes months and months. And they are aligned with the state on the one hand, but on the other hand, they just don't. I would say they don't want to immerse themselves into actually doing something in public interest, you know.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I'm Claire, based at the U.S. Mission to the EU in Brussels. The list of Balkan countries that you all researched, if you look at their ties to European institutions or transatlantic institutions, they're all kind of different, right? Did you see any kind of top-line trends? Did you see a difference in the take on China for countries that are NATO members, countries that are EU members, countries that are EU and NATO members? And are there any kind of takeaways that you could share for us? Thanks.
Yeah, well, I think that probably China Index can tell you definitely more about that. But then when it comes to the Balkans, yes, there are huge differences. So, for example, you have Serbia, which remains, as I said several times, sort of the main playground, and we are still a country that is wants to get into the European Union. So we are sort of sitting on at least 2 chairs. And then for other countries, I would say that their exposure to China is, it's definitely smaller. As you saw, for example, with Albania and also North Macedonia. And now with Montenegro, we have these new developments concerning this loan that they took from the Chinese state bank, that at one point they realized they cannot return that money themselves. So then they begged the European Union for help. So I would say, yes, there are huge differences. Serbia leading, sort of that friendship with China is quite stable, unfortunately. And then, for example, when it comes to Bosnia, what we saw is that stronger ties between, there are stronger ties between Republika Srpska, which is mainly a Serbian led entity in, not Serbian, but Serb-led entity, thanks, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The vast majority of projects are actually there. And then in the other part of the country, actually, there are not many Chinese. And what I also wanted to say, and I forgot, if you take a closer look at the map, you will see that there is nothing on Kosovo. We, of course, wanted to see what and if anything China is doing in Kosovo, and we did a sort of research with our journalists, checking information, and due to, of course, pro-Western sentiment and huge Western influence on Kosovo, China did attempt to come, but all these attempts remain only attempts. So yes, there are definitely major differences when it comes to exposure and ties and connections between the Western Balkan countries and China.
Hi, I'm Nadia from Radio Free Asia. I'm just interested in Serbia. Is there a big Chinese diaspora community? What kind of role are they playing? Because in some country, the Chinese diaspora community is very active, and there's a lot of free Chinese newspaper, they can distribute it to the local Chinese, and most of the time they carry out the narrative from the Chinese official reports or position on certain critical issues. So do you have any information to share in this regard? Thank you.
So about that and about the numbers and Chinese sort of say diaspora in the Balkans, I'm not sure of the numbers, and I wouldn't say the numbers are big. So what we have across the Balkans are like these like small Chinese markets or shopping malls with like private individuals opening them like years, even decades ago. And then when it comes to the media, yes, there are some cultural centers across, not some, a lot of Chinese cultural centers, which are actually promoting Chinese ideology across these countries as a very nice form of soft power. And that is, well, when we initially started like looking at China, we didn't really want to, we didn't think about these institutions. And then when we did the research, we realized that there are so many different institutions, cultural centers, then departments located at the universities. And then we also mapped them. And I know there are also sort of like ties between, let's say, Serbian national television and I think it's China National Radio. They are also, sort of trying to influence politics and society with these strong narratives. And I think there are quite a few good studies about the influence of media, the influence of like Chinese media in the Western Balkans, and the messages that they are sending. So I think I can share that with you if you're interested to learn more. This is everything. So many thanks for the questions. Thanks for joining me for this session, and thanks to the organizers. So yeah, I hope to see you again at some point.